From the sands of Egypt to the gates of Rome, History Dude BC brings the ancient world to life. Hey there, welcome to History Dude BC. I've always been fascinated by the ancient world, and I love sharing that fascination with you guys. My goal is to make history come alive for you, to show you that the people, events, and places of the past are just as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. So, whether you're interested in the pyramids of Giza, or the Colosseum in Rome, the art of war, or the lives of ordinary people in the ancient world, I've got you covered. So, if you're as excited about ancient history as I am, then be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Welcome to the BC family. On to today's video. He was one of the greatest philosophers ever. He ruled an empire from Rome while at war with most of the known world, and he did it all while writing down his thoughts on paper, which we can read even today. This is the story of Marcus Aurelius. So, Marcus Aurelius was born in 121 CE in the city of Rome. Unlike many other emperors who came from humble beginnings, Aurelius had a silver spoon in his mouth from day one. His father was a man of great wealth, while his mother was a member of the imperial family. So, young Marcus had a privileged upbringing and the best education that Rome could offer. Apparently, he was a very smart kid, too. The Emperor Hadrian praised his intelligence and wit, saying that Marcus was already a philosopher at 5 years old. However, despite his royal connections, Marcus wasn't next in line for the throne. At birth, he was actually destined to be a member of the Senate, if you know what I mean. But everything changed when his cousin, the Emperor Antoninus, died. Antoninus had no children, so he decided to adopt a young Marcus to be his heir instead. As you can imagine, this made Marcus' life a lot more interesting. Now, he spent much of his time studying philosophy instead of just hanging around in taverns. It's believed that he learned rhetoric from the famous philosopher and rhetorician Aurelius, who was also the teacher of the infamous Caligula. After finishing his education, Marcus Aurelius was deemed worthy of being an adult and entered politics. He was a member of the Senate for 13 years before becoming emperor. During this time, he served in several government positions and earned a reputation as a man of integrity. That was probably thanks to his mother, who raised him with strong morals. His mother was also the one who introduced him to Stoicism, a school of thought popular among the Roman elite. In short, Stoicism was a philosophy of virtue ethics, meaning that the good life consists of living according to virtue or doing the right thing. It taught people that they must live in accordance with nature and embrace whatever fate had in store for them. Sounds like good advice, don't you think? In 161 CE, Marcus Aurelius's time had finally come. Emperor Antoninus died, and Marcus Aurelius became the co-emperor alongside Lucius Verus, who was Antoninus' other adopted son. Together, they ruled over the Roman Empire for 5 years until Lucius Verus died in 169. Now, the empire was huge, stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia. But despite its size, there were constant threats on its borders. When Verus died, Aurelius became the sole ruler of Rome and had to face the consequences of this fact. For example, he had to put down a revolt in Judea, which he did in brutal fashion, or he had to deal with an invasion of Germanic tribes in the north. But these were only appetizers. In 175, the Parthian king Osroes I declared war on Rome and invaded Roman Mesopotamia. To make things worse, the Roman army was in Britannia at the time, fighting against the Iceni tribe. So Aurelius had no choice but to march his legions across the continent to defend his honor. Luckily, he found an ally in the Roman general Avidius Cassius. Together, they managed to stop the Parthians, and Cassius even chased them back into their own territory. A few years later, however, Aurelius would have to go to war again, when another plague hit Rome and killed millions of people. The victims suffered from fever, pain, and swelling of the lymph glands. Many historians believe that it was the dreaded Antonine Plague, aka smallpox. Whoever it was, it didn't stop Aurelius from going to war again in 178. This time he went to Germania to fight against the Chatti and Marcomanni tribes. And once again he was aided by a capable general named Titus Flavius Claudius. Together they campaigned along the Danube for 3 years, achieving limited success. But after suffering heavy casualties, Aurelius finally decided to come home. His wars may not have been glorious, but they were necessary to protect the empire from invaders. And Aurelius always tried to do the right thing. For example, during the Jewish war, he allowed the priests to keep their customs as long as they paid their taxes. But not everyone appreciated his tolerance. Around 180, Aurelius started having health problems. He got sick and almost died in Pannonia, modern-day Hungary. On his way back to Rome, he fell gravely ill once again and soon died. Historians believe that he might have contracted malaria from the swamps of the Po Valley. He never married, but had 2 sons who succeeded him as emperors. If you're wondering why Aurelius never married, it's because he was gay. No, just kidding. His first wife was Faustina, the younger, whom he married in 145. They had 2 children together, Commodus and Faustina. Unfortunately, Faustina passed away in 162 and Aurelius married his deceased wife's personal attendant, Julia Maesa. The strange thing is that Maesa also passed away in 162, which led to speculation about her cause of death. Some sources claim that Aurelius's first wife, Faustina, had her attendants put to death out of jealousy. So maybe she poisoned the second Faustina out of revenge. But that's just a theory. Now, let's get back to the story. You see, Marcus Aurelius was a big fan of Stoicism, and wrote down his thoughts on the subject in a book called Meditations. Meditations was originally intended for himself and his close friends, but it was published without his knowledge. These are his honest thoughts and feelings about life and how to live it. Here's what I mean. You see, Aurelius was a man of high ideals, but he was also very aware of the limitations of human nature. He knew that he wasn't perfect, and that he often fell short of his own expectations. In fact, he writes about his own faults and weaknesses in Meditations. For example, he writes, "I am sometimes too trusting, sometimes too harsh, sometimes indecisive. I find fault with others for being too slow when I myself am still slower." He also admits that he can be irritable and quick to anger. "I get angry," he writes, "but it is my own fault, for I choose to be angry. I choose to interpret things in a certain way, and that is what causes my anger." What's interesting is that despite his awareness of his own flaws, Aurelius was still able to maintain a sense of humor about them. He writes, "When you want to be angry, take a deep breath and reflect on how ridiculous it is to be upset about something that is none of your concern." Another thing that shines through in Meditations is his love for humanity. He writes, "The fruit of this life is good character and acts for the common good." He also has some very wise things to say about how we should treat other people. "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he writes, "so make your decisions in accordance with the nature of your soul." In other words, our actions should be guided by our conscience, not by what other people think or do. He also teaches us to be tolerant and understanding towards other people. People aren't bothered by things, but by their opinions about those things. He writes, "So when someone says something unpleasant, remember that it might not be true, and if it is, then it doesn't concern you. Aurelius was a firm believer in the idea that we all have a purpose in life, and he believed that our purpose is to do good for others. He writes, "The fruit of this life is good character and acts for the common good." He also believed that we must accept whatever fate has in store for us with serenity. "Look at the flower," he writes, "how it turns its face towards the sun, and does not resist the wind, but bends with it. Be like the flower." Finally, Aurelius teaches us that happiness is not something that happens to us, but rather something that we must cultivate within ourselves. "Happiness is a state of mind," he writes, "not a function of circumstances." Meditations was written over a period of 10 years, starting in 171, when the emperor was 50 years old. He wrote it in Greek and addressed it to himself, though some historians believe that it was actually addressed to his son Commodus. Aurelius was a prolific writer and composed thousands of pages of philosophical and historical works, as well as hundreds of letters. However, unfortunately, most of them have been lost to history. Meditations is the only book that has survived, and it's believed that he wrote it for himself as a way of keeping his philosophical ideas organized and as a reminder of what was important to him. Although Aurelius was arguably one of the greatest philosophers to ever live, there are a few reasons why he isn't as famous as some of the other ancient philosophers, such as Plato or Aristotle. First, most of his work has been lost, leaving us with very little to go on. Second, much of what we know about him comes from Roman sources, which may not be entirely objective. Finally, Stoicism isn't as popular as it once was, so fewer people are familiar with his work. Nevertheless, Aurelius was a highly influential figure in the ancient world, and his ideas have had a lasting impact on Western thought. In fact, he is considered to be the founder of Stoicism, and his work has inspired countless people throughout the centuries. Thank you for watching. The past has many more stories to tell, and History Dude BC is just getting started. Hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in our next journey through time. We've only just begun to scratch the surface of what happened in the 1000 years before Christ, and I have a feeling you're gonna want to be around for this. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. With your support, I can keep bringing these videos to life. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.